Okay, welcome everybody to our Capital Subcommittee meeting. It's been a while since we met, but a lot has been happening since we met. So I think first off, we will approve the minutes from, hold on one second, I'm looking for the date and I have it here, but I can't move it. 1 sec. Here we go. From December 5th. Have people had a chance to read them? Hopefully. Yeah. Okay, great. I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Okay. Mariah
Yes.
and Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, that's done. And now let's go to our agenda for today. So the first thing is the update on the CIP. And I'm not sure are you doing that, Susan? Yeah, Susan, you're on mute. Still on mute.
Yeah.
There you go.
I said I can. I absolutely can. Yeah, great. So the town has moved forward with the CIP plan for the upcoming year. And the good news for us is that they front loaded some funds for us so that we can actually plan for the next couple of years. When I was tallying up the amount the town allocated for our deferred maintenance, it really would cover what we had planned, at least for this year. Things will change, of course, for the next couple of years. So not only 25, 26, and 27. So that's great. They give us money in buckets, and they fully funded our classroom capacity. And just because I don't just want to make sure everybody knows the classroom capacity, because I wouldn't have known that initially. Classroom capacity really pays for the leases for BEEP. And before that, Clark Road, which we're terminating that lease at the end of this year and moving some of our all of our staff out of that facility into other spaces.
I think if I could just interrupt for a minute. The classroom capacity in the past had been to make more spaces within our existing schools. When we got to the max of expanding spaces within the schools, that's when we started to rent spaces. So just to make it clear why it's called classroom capacity. Second, giving up the Clark lease is $1 million that goes back into the CIP, which is a huge piece, I think, for us. And with the two leases that we have right now, just to make it clear to people, the one hopefully on Beacon Street, when we are able to move those three of the classes, they have more than three, into the Pierce School once it's built, will also hopefully bring that lease off. So
yeah. Thank you. So that's funded at the level that we need, and includes the expansion of time at Beacon and at Putteram for the BEAC full day program. So that's great. They also funded $200,000 in furnishings. $125,000 of that is for cafeteria tables at the high school, not the new cafeteria, the older cafeteria. They're very, very worn, and very difficult to keep in good working order. They've had.
Can I annotate that? They're from 1997. I don't think we bought new ones since then.
Yeah, yeah. So they're well worn. We've got our money's worth. They don't owe us anything. And so 125 of the 200,000 is specifically for that. And then there's a certain amount of money that has been set aside for us to do, recurring updates on furnishings. So one of those items, for example, is whiteboards. Whiteboards have a life. And so many whiteboards are have been replaced in blocks throughout, every year, a certain amount have been done. So anyways, we have $200,000 set aside for the upcoming year. And then a new ask for us was, and this is consistent with the way the town has handled things on the building and maintenance side, is to set aside funds for a particular purpose. So for example, Charlie has money set aside for ADA compliance issues and roofing and HVAC and buckets for certain things. We had requested, and they did support a set aside for IEP accommodations and school modifications specifically. So it's not so much that we would be funding anything related to an IEP, rather it would be if.
Excuse me, can I just put in a request that we start recording, because all of this
We
detail.
are recording. We have been recording since the beginning.
Oh, it doesn't show on my screen. Okay, thank you. I apologize for interrupting, Susan.
No, that's okay.
So as I was saying, it's for cases in which we would need to modify the actual physical space. So an example might be if a student has, comes to us and they have challenges with hearing or hearing impairment of some sort, and there needs to be an accommodation in the space itself, not for something on the person, but rather on the facility itself, that we would be able to have money set aside in order to address those, because they're urgent, timely typically, and not always known in advance. So it's wonderful. We had asked for 50,000, and maybe we'd have 50,000 each year, similar to how Charlie and the maintenance, town maintenance side has funded that. But the town decided that since they had extra free cash this year, that they would just fund $200,000 upfront, so that we wouldn't need to request it over and over again. So that's a separate set aside for that. And then deferred maintenance, again, we requested $2,120,000, and we received $4,670,000. So that was an additional $2.5 million. And again, if you look in the out years, which is great, because that means that we can plan for the completion of the Lincoln School renovation, completion of the Baldwin renovation, and also address some of these really important needs in the other buildings as well. So, and then they funded $250,000 for a long-term capital plan study. So that was great. And that's the update on CIP. Of course, Charlie on the town side also got money, but if he's here, he can certainly speak to that. It looks like perhaps he requested 2.8 million, but got 1.8. But Charlie can maybe speak more to that if he feels a need to. Some of those accounts, of course, as we've highlighted all along, are not just for the town. They're set asides for town and school buildings. So I know that Charlie uses, like, for example, his HVAC accounts to put in the conditioned air units at Lincoln. So for the Lincoln project, for example, that would come out of his HVAC line. That's my understanding, and not out of our CIP grants. And then he gets reimbursement and goes back into that account, and it kind of moves forward in that way. So that's the update on CIP.
Charlie, did you want to say anything, or I don't
No.
want to put you on the spot? Okay.
That about summarizes. Yes, on the town side, we did get more monies. I still need to review it because obviously I didn't get all the money I wanted to in certain locations, but that's between me and the sixth floor. But yes, the school department did get quite a lot of money this year. So it's just a good thing. It's a very good thing.
So one of the things I'm thinking is we need to, like we did last year, make a list or go through our list, see what's most critical, do again the same process so that we have it ready for advisory. I assume advisory, Carol, is going to be approving this or putting in their 2 cents, whatever.
We already did that, Helen, in the fall.
Yeah, we
Huh?
did.
We already did that in the fall. I think there was one meeting you couldn't be at, or maybe, I can't remember, was Helen there? I thought she was there at one of the 2 of them, but maybe I'm misremembering.
Okay.
But it was done maybe even in August. It was done in advance
Well,
of the
but-
CIP submission
Yeah.
with
Okay.
Charlie and Sarah. It was,
And me.
well, maybe,
Yeah.
and you, exactly.
Yeah,
And I think you were there at
I-
least one of them, Helen.
Yeah, I have a comprehensive list for each year.
Okay.
Yep,
All right.
so unlike the previous year where we didn't all sit down in the exact same way, this year we all sat down. And that's why we had ended up, just as a reminder, a lot of the things that were, the list shrunk significantly, but we had also essentially zeroed out in the request things that we were still a little bit dubious on, and we are going to go back and get more information from building leaders for future years.
Yeah, I will tell you that advisory is going to want to understand your prioritization rubric. And it would be great if there, you could have that in writing in addition to giving us a narrative when you meet with us. And it's also going to be asking the sixth floor its rationale for how it's allocated CIP funds across all uses, not just schools.
Okay. All right. I think it's probably pretty self-explanatory, but we can certainly put something together. And do you know when that's coming up at advisory, Carol?
Well, right now there's I think, first look at the combined operating and CIP budget for advisory on either the 25th or the 26th. And Cliff,
What?
March.
Oh, okay.
And then I've been waiting for Cliff, who's been out of the country, to come back so we can schedule some joint meetings, and then you'll have something alone with the capital subcommittee. And we need to schedule that. But first, we're going to have the first look on whichever one of those two dates it is.
And can I just ask, so it's capital subcommittee of the advisory committee?
Of the advisory committee, you know, I don't know how it was in the other towns, but in theory, though the sixth floor puts together the budget and you put together your budget, the budget that's submitted to town meeting is the advisory committee's budget.
Yeah.
And it is, depending on the year, more than a rubber stamp. And, you know, like the pushback on the classroom capacity leases being in the CIP has been coming from the advisory committee. So there's been a lot of longstanding issues with the way the capital investment process has been run and the lack of insight as to how things are allocated and how we as a town allocate both our capital dollars and our debt capacity. And we're trying to get more consistency and transparency as to how that happens. So it's not going to all happen this year, but just so you understand where the capital subcommittee and the advisory as a whole is coming from.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, if you can try and let us know sooner rather than later about that date, because I think there's some people here who would like to be at that meeting. And, you know, no,
I'll put it in the chat.
okay. No, about all the dates that you might need us or that we need to be aware of.
I assumed that Lisa Porcher had scheduled it with the school committee, that it's on our calendar.
Have you gotten anything, Susan?
I have not.
Okay. I
let
think
me
sometimes there's a miscommunication. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Yes.
When I schedule, I always schedule with Cliff. It always seems like it's a chair-to-chair conversation, so.
He's never called me.
No, my
Yeah,
point is that
I
if
just
Carol, that
have-
you and Carol as capital and capital chairs might want to sync
Yeah.
up.
I just have listed that
See,
for the full AC, there's a meeting on Tuesday, March 26th, in which the school CIP and operating budget, it's going to be the preliminary look. I don't know who scheduled that. That was a date that was given to me.
are those typically in the evening or during, I mean, I'm assuming.
Always.
right?
The,
Okay.
the advisory, the full advisory committee meetings are always on Tuesday and Thursday night, depending on how big the schedule is. They start at 7 or 7:30. And then the subcommittee meetings are all over the place as far as whether they're during the day or in the evening. We've
Could you,
been trying to do more during the day to make it easier for staff, but a lot of advisory committee members
Yeah.
just aren't available.
They're not available, right?
Could you just explain what a preliminary look means? I mean, why would the full committee look preliminarily before?
Well, like I said, Helen, this was just on the schedule and I took it as a given. I don't know
Got it.
where it came from. I've been
Okay.
operating under like, oh, someone has made this decision and I don't know. I don't know
Dennis Doty
anything
is
about
still
it.
the chair, right?
I'm sorry?
Dennis is still the chair, right?
Dennis is still the chair. I'll check with Carla because I know even though she's not on advisory, she's very involved in scheduling.
Okay. All right, let's move on, guys. So can the next item on the list, I think, unless there's other questions, I'm sorry. No. The Clark Road renovation relocation plan. Is there an update?
I'm meeting with the coordinators on Friday morning to review the plan. And so our tentative timeline is that we'll meet with them so that, answer all their questions. We're hoping to, have dumpsters arrive at Clark Road right before April vacation to allow plenty of time for them to sift and sort through things that are stored there. We're gonna put it in 3 buckets, really, or 4 maybe, but one will go into the dumpster if it's just, resources or damaged items or whatever. If it's stuff that can be donated that we're not going to use, it's outdated for us, and we'll have a donation pile. And then we'll set up, ship to section, one for each school, so that if there's curriculum resources that they're boxed up for each subject area and sent off to the schools for teachers to use in their classrooms. And then there'll be stuff that then gets set aside to go to Baldwin. And we're providing them with, information about that. We have the blueprint. We're going to go over that so they can kind of see their space. And then we were thinking that when we get a little further down the road and maybe when the floors are in and the ceilings are painted and we don't have, electrical work and all that stuff is done, maybe later in May, we would do like a field trip so that they could go in and see the space and, better conceptualize what that will look like. So, and again, we're only going to move up into the top area. So Charlie and his team are really focusing on getting the upstairs done. The downstairs will be CIP money for the summer that we'll be using to complete that. And that's okay because, school's not in session and we can function without that temporarily to allow ample time to properly update that before we begin to use it. So that's the Clark, and of course we know in terms of classrooms, we're opening one of the classrooms at Heath up to Beep, and then the remaining class is going over to Driscoll to join the other sections that we sent over there this year. And we're just doing some final tweaks, but we think we're pretty close to having a home for each. We have ideas for some. There's like kind of a choice that needs to be made for a couple of the departments. We're horse trading with principals right now. It's a little bit of space, but yeah, we're in good shape. Karen's got some preliminary estimates on moving costs. So we're feeling pretty good about that.
And base is going where?
They're up, they're at the high school.
Okay.
Remaining
that's
at
what I
they're
thought.
at the high school. Yeah, we moved, I think, to the 3rd floor. If Karen's on, is Karen on?
Yeah.
I think I see Karen.
Yeah, Karen's there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're in room 340 at the high school. They're all settled, everybody's set up. So they're good and they like their new space.
And they don't do walk-in registrations anymore, right? So that's not an issue.
Anybody that comes in can come to the night attendant. She gets in about 3 o'clock. So that anybody that wanted to walk in would probably be encouraged to come later in the day.
Mhm. Okay. All right, that's great. I guess that we can segue into the Baldwin School repairs and renovation, and maybe Charlie can tell us a little bit about that. How is it going?
Sure. Well, frankly, it's not going as fast as I want it to be, but that's how construction goes. And I have had some difficulties with the contractors as usual. But it's plugging along. It's painful, but it's okay. We've had some rough inspections on wiring and plumbing, and I had a meeting with the building commissioner the other day to go over some other details, so I'm meeting the sprinkler company and the fire alarm company today as well, so
The building wasn't sprinkled before, was it? Or was it?
no, it's fully sprinkled, but when you wanted me to change the offices and create offices to the ceiling, I have to add sprinkler heads in those spaces, so. Just
I
want to make
see.
sure on the same page.
Okay,
And as was discussed, taking the lower floor off the schedule for a while helped out both with the budget and the schedule. So we'll clean that up, seal it up, and we'll continue upstairs and get that done by May 1st. That's the goal anyway.
that's terrific. Thank you. It's really important to get that space ready for the people who need to move into it. And I think it's a good use of the building. Any questions on that? On either the relocation or the renovations? Okay, I think now we'll go into the meat of the meeting, the school repair and maintenance budget request. FY25, and I had asked Charlie to give us the FY23 costs, both the budget and the actuals, and FY24 budgets and year to date, so that it could help to frame us for the FY25 request. And this is part of that 4 million, correct? That we're getting. I mean, that's where most of these monies would come from, not all.
There is presently in FY24 many CIP funds, approximately $211,000 left over. So we would start with that first, obviously. And we'd work on the $4.7 million list. As was mentioned, we're going to have to prioritize it very soon, so I can start planning. And I'm sure there might be a couple of adjustments, but yeah, I'm ready to go. I don't want the committee to, have any expectations that I'm going to be able to spend $4.7 million in 2 months. So we have to be reasonable with what we expect to be done and what I can done. I can go fast, but not that fast.
Well, I mean, to wit, we even in a concentrated area between Lincoln and Baker, we were able to spend almost all of the money, but that was $1 million, right? $1,020,000.
About 800,000. Yeah. So
I
hopefully
just
go
would
ahead.
flag too that for FY25, our actual ask was 2.1 million,
True.
right? So this is, even though it's being awarded in this year, it's not to be spent in this year.
No, but even
I'm going to warn you that there's going to be a lot of pushback on giving you extra money. So you better prioritize, because there's no guarantee you're getting 4.7 million. This is going to be very controversial. So prioritize and have plans, but there's going to be a lot of controversy around this.
Yeah, and we're clear about what the funding is for. Like, it's very specific what we would use the money for. So we do have that already. And we went through, as Mariah said, I met with the principals. We prioritized with them. Charlie and Sarah and Karen and I met. Then we called in Mariah for her institutional knowledge of it. So I do feel like we're in pretty good shape in terms of preparing for the conversation. And we'd be delighted if we got all of that, but we're really, it's specific stuff. It's not nebulous in any way. So I think that will be helpful.
That's
I think
great.
we've done a lot of prep.
Susan, the materials we at the AC were given for the CIP request had no detail for that 4.7 million, which was incredibly concerning.
Yeah.
So if
We have
you
that.
have it, I would say send it as soon as possible, so we can start getting a handle on it.
Will do.
Thank you.
We'll go through, I'll meet with Charlie now that we know all of this. We didn't know if it would be funded, but it's a priority. I'm meeting with Karen next week. In the next couple of weeks, we'll clean up our list and make it nice and clear for you, and happy to share.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So you
And
think
then
it's good-
we'll talk about having a meeting with you, Susan, and Helen, and whoever else, and obviously Charlie, with the capital subcommittee. We're talking about the building department's budget, operating budget, which includes your section of building operations. I think when did we come up with? I think maybe on the 25th. We have a date for that. So, we're
So you
starting
said
to
the
sink our teeth
25th
into it.
was the full, you said the 25th was the
One of
full-
them's during the day.
Oh.
One of them's in the evening.
Okay,
So I'll let you know when those dates are.
Great.
okay. So I think was there anything else then that we wanted to discuss under the school repair and maintenance budget request?
Is there
Like
an
the-
action item specifically to schedule that meeting? To discuss, you know, just to review what we had come up with the fall and confirm that like nothing has changed since then? And as Susan said, right, to just double check it and just make
Yeah.
sure, you know, something might have needed to get tweaked in the meantime. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking it's a good idea to revisit the list and make sure.
Yeah,
And I would
I think
imagine that that should happen in the next week or so, because if these meetings are happening on the 25th, and just knowing, especially like Charlie, you're a busy guy, so making sure that we can get onto your schedule before then.
yeah.
Stand on it.
Okay, thank you.
And I would like to be part of that because I think I was not part of the first part.
Yeah, I think we have our internal meeting first and then, but we schedule to run when everybody else is available, but yeah.
Okay, before the
Yeah.
16th would be good for me because I'll be out of town from the 16th to the 25th, but I can zoom in if I have to.
Maybe that Friday, the 15th or something. 16th is a Saturday, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah. So, yeah, can we just take a strong, is everybody available from the capital planning committee on that date?
I am.
If we do the full capital planning committee, it's going to be a public noticed meeting.
Yeah,
Is that
no,
what
I
you
think
want to
it's
do?
just
Or do you want
me
to do a
and you.
subset,
Yeah, subset.
Okay,
just to review?
yeah, that's fine.
Yes.
That's fine.
Okay.
And Charlie, we'll catch up with you this week, schedule a time and go through and make sure that there are any follow-up things that you want me to explore on the school side, that I do that.
Can I
before
just
that.
get clarity? This meeting, there's not two meetings. It's going to be like what it was last time, right? You, me, Charlie, Sarah, Karen, and Helen too.
On the 16th, yes, but I'm
The 15th.
saying, sorry, 15th,
Okay.
but we're gonna meet before then.
Yeah.
Not you. I'm
Yes,
just.
I
I'm saying
understood.
for Cassandra,
I don't
yeah.
understand. Who is we're going to meet beforehand? That's
The
what I don't
staff
understand.
is going to meet beforehand to clean it up and then they're going to present it to us.
Okay.
We're not gonna change
I would
it.
rather just join your meeting. I don't like see the value of two meetings, but whatever.
It's
We
it's
can
not for
discuss
you
this
to meet.
offline. Why don't we discuss this offline and
Yeah.
figure it out? Okay.
Yeah.
That's.
Can I just correct the date I gave you earlier? I have it as Tuesday, the 26th, that there's a preliminary review with the AC of the operating and CIP budget for the schools.
At what time is that?
7. And again, I'll check with Carla and Lisa to see who scheduled that.
Sorry, which one is that one?
This is this preliminary introduction to the school budget operating in the CIP in front of the full AC.
Okay, so I was told that by Cliff last night that he was looking to schedule the subcommittee in late March. So I don't see how the preview could be the late March as well.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll
I'll
detangle this one
we'll
separately.
detangle it, okay.
All right. Let's move on. Is there anything else on the repair and maintenance budget that needs to be discussed? The request for next year was there. I think the utility cost is probably one of the bigger problems that we're facing. So maybe we'll segue into that unless there's any other.
Can I just make one comment? I just want to say that that I personally think it's great that there is a multi-year approach to the repair and maintenance. But I want to be clear that that the school committee or the school's request was the 2.1 million, lest there be any confusion in advisory that schools have asked 4.8 million. Carol, your reaction to that makes me think possibly, and I could have misunderstood, that that this is being perceived as a request from the schools. And so
We didn't know
okay.
where it came from.
Well, that's why I'm saying this, is I
Yeah.
want to be clear that if you are feeling a certain way about it, that, well, again, I think it's actually a great way to handle this, but I still think that that you should know that this is something that was put in
You
not
know, in
off the basis of
hindsight,
our
yeah.
specific requests this year.
Yeah. In hindsight, the sixth floor has never traditionally shared with us how they come up with the allocation of CIP dollars. It's sort of like a black box, and they give us this request, which is, not a good way to do planning. You heard Chaz saying, people always say a budget reflects priorities. Well, when it comes to capital investments, we have no idea how these priorities are getting set and what the long range thinking is. So we don't understand from looking at the full town, since it's just one bucket of money, how the streets versus the buildings versus the sustainability and the climate resiliency and all these other things, we don't have any insight as to how those things are being balanced and sorted out. And the reserve requirements for the town by the rating agencies have just been doubled in order to maintain our AAA. So there's lots of places where cash needs to
Doubled?
go.
I didn't.
Pardon?
I didn't read that they doubled it. Where did they
It
double
went
it?
from 10% of revenue. I think it's 10% of revenues. I'm speaking out of turn, to 20%, whatever the
We
base
have
is.
21% now in reserves, is what I read in the Moody's, that exists there now.
Then maybe I misunderstood Melissa, because she was saying it was going to be a challenge to get up to the 20%. But anyways,
Oh,
the
maybe I'm
point
wrong.
isn't the details. The point is we have a lot of different demands on the capital budget, and we're looking for more understanding as to how these things are getting balanced. In addition to asking you guys, how do you balance, your prioritization? We're asking that of all departments. We're trying to move towards having understanding as to how you prioritize things. And we're also looking, just so you know, for people to be thinking about how their capital investments are impacting their operating costs going forward, including things like utilities, including, cleaning and maintenance, including insurance. So people ask the question, well, if I have a bigger footprint or contract, how is that going to impact my operating budget or the operating budget for the town as a whole? We're just trying to tie things together so there's good understanding of the impact of decisions, both on other aspects of the town and on a given department's or the school's own operating budget. As you were saying, Mariah, at whichever meeting it was, I can't remember, about utility costs. That could be
Council
more money
partnership.
in the pockets. Yeah. So we're just trying to continue on that same sort of theme. And we didn't think the 4.7 million came from you, but the detail you saw in the budget book was all there was for that 4.7 million, a whole big glob of stuff. So it'll be great when Susan gives us the detail on it.
Well, I appreciate that because I'm new to the conversation. So that was very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anything else on that? All right, why don't we move on to the utility costs, which all of us are experiencing increases even in our own homes. quite a bit. I was pretty shocked with my electricity bill this month, but Charlie, how are we doing and what's happening?
Well, for
You
this
want
fiscal year,
Share
we,
this spreadsheets or?
it's up to you.
Do you need me to share something for you, Charlie?
Sure, I guess share the one that had,
School utilities 22, 24.
yeah, and then what was budget and request for 25, it's a small little report.
All right, so let me,
Apparently Charlie submitted stuff and there's materials for the meeting slightly up on the website. I don't know.
Not that one, it's,
not that one. Okay.
sorry, I named them.
Oh, no,
for you.
okay. So I have school budget, RM utilities, so let's try
Yeah,
this
let's
one.
try that one.
No, it's on the website.
Susan, you're not on mute.
Yeah, that's a version of, there's actually another one that's a little simpler.
All right.
That might be good, no? Will just walk us through it or?
Well, I got what I have for 25 budgeted, requested on another sheet. I just want to line everything up.
Okay.
There's one more. I think, Betsy, it's almost the same name.
Okay, it might have been, give me 1 second. I think it was the one I only got as a PDF, so let me try it here. 1
That
sec.
might be it. You're right. You are correct.
Is this it?
Yay. So, for FY 25, and I wanted to show this, as it relates to R&M and utilities. So for FY 24, we will more than likely be about $800,000 short in utilities for the schools. And I'm being told by the 6th floor that part of that will be supplemented by $600,000 in savings from health insurance from the schools. We still have several more months to go to come up with the 200,000, so I'm sure we'll have more conversations with that, whether I can cover it internally with the budget or we'd have to do a reserve fund, but I am working with the 6th floor on that.
And what has been spent to date on the FY 24 utilities?
Oh, that's on another sheet.
Yeah, I think that's a more helpful one than this one. That's why I wanted to go back to that, even though it's got more numbers. Because it sort of gives us, the FY 22, what we actually spent, and also rather than the budgeted.
Yeah. If you want to go back one, Betsy.
To, is it this one here?
Yeah. Go
Yeah,
down.
that one, yeah.
So this is a snapshot of where we are today on repair and maintenance and utilities.
So why don't you just walk us through that maybe? So that'll
Sure.
be helpful.
So we have the original budget of 3.5 million and change. And as you can see, I've already spent 1.2 million. The rest of it is encumbrances. What I think I'm going to need to the end of the year. A big problem with this is that I can't get bills from contractors and I can't get contractors to finish things. That's why I'm pretty late in the fiscal year to have so much money encumbered. And that's actually who I was talking to this morning was the plumber to see how he's going on preventative maintenance PM work. And he admitted that he's behind. He admitted that he's trying to get bills out. And he's just having trouble finding staff. They all are. But we do a lot of work during the vacations. So they got a lot of work done in February, and they'll be doing a lot more work in April, and we'll finish up the rest of it around it. So it's been a mild winter. Hopefully it'll be a mild spring. We won't have to turn on the air conditioning earlier. So I think we'll be fine. And we'll end up not in the red on school repair and maintenance. As I said with utilities, we will be ending up, in my opinion, probably close to $800,000 in the red. You can see how much I've spent so far and how much is left over. And I have been working with the 6th floor on that. A lot of it is electricity, frankly. And we weren't properly budgeted this fiscal year, and we weren't budgeted properly the year before. So I'd like to also point out, and this is going to keep coming up, but the Driscoll School, the new Driscoll School uses all electricity. And the bill for the previous month was $59,000. And $59,000 is a lot of money per month. And I had been working with GGD to help me predict next year's budget, and also working with the sixth floor. And of that, more importantly, is where are we with Driscoll? Is Driscoll operating correctly? Is that the right number? And I'm glad to say it is, even though it's so high. One of the reasons it's so high, it's actually twice what it should be right now. That's because we don't have the old building down and the ground source heat pump system put in yet. So I'm using electric boilers to supplement the heat over there. And that was always part of the design. They will remain there. In the event there's a failure, or for some reason the water coming out of the ground is below 50 degrees, they will start and run. But they are very, very expensive to operate, electric boilers. The contract has been a little bit behind schedule, but I'm optimistic he'll get the building down, he'll get the well filled in, and we'll be okay starting in the fall. And as I said, these bills should literally be cut in half for heat. So all good. If the building wasn't there, we had a lot, that we could put the wells in at the same time, we wouldn't have had this situation. But because we
Well,
kept
like we're doing at Pierce, where we are putting them in.
correct, they'll be going across the street, but they'll be put in at, the same time of the construction. So when we start the building up, we won't have electric boilers running for heat. It'll be running as it should. So
Charlie, if we were to own the solar panels, the roof is ready for,
Mhm.
that would cut into that electricity bill a lot, correct?
it would take a chunk out of it. Yes, it would.
I mean,
have to-
one of the things to keep in mind for that project is, if there's money left in the project from the contingency, to use it for that
Mhm.
may be a very good use to save us money in the future.
But we still haven't taken down the old building, and we haven't gone underground yet. The old oil tank is still over there. So we still have potentially surprises on the ground.
Right.
Budget's been going well, but until it's actually done, Helen, we don't know how much money we're gonna have
Oh,
left.
I'm not spending that contingency. I'm not spending it, but
Do
I'm
not
thinking,
spend it,
I'm
please.
thinking ahead more,
No.
how can we make it more efficient and better, less costly for operating, as Carol would say. Right,
Yeah.
Carol?
Yeah, and that raises the question of whether or not whatever, and I don't know the details, the extra 2.6 million you got, should that be being used for energy saving efforts to lower operating costs for the schools, rather than, I have no idea what the 2.6 million is being used for. Would that be a better return on investment, or whatever metric it is? But those are the sorts of questions that we'd have, like, should we be installing more solar panels on the schools, or doing it sooner,
Or should we be owning them? We have them already.
Right.
have them
These
at
are the
high school.
kinds of questions that we were hoping are being thought through as part of the expenditure
Mhm.
decisions.
Well, they're two separate buckets, but it's certainly part of
Yeah.
what we're thinking.
I would say that's a good idea, but I want to just separate sustainability from energy efficiency. So I've had a conversation with Chaz, and personally, my goal is always to make the buildings better. I want to make the environment better, but investing in sustainability is a whole different discussion, and it involves a lot of planning. The goal is to electrify all the buildings in town. It's going to cost quite a lot of money. And I need to know what the priorities are of the town. What would you like me to do? I would be glad to invest $1 million if we get a payback within the next 5 or 6 years of that $1 million by doing solar or putting in more efficient lighting or whatever it is. That's my goal, is a long payback for sustainability. And it's an incredible investment. And I have some rough ideas. It's not ready for prime time on how much it's going to cost, but it's very, very expensive. And even if we had the staff and the time, it would still take 20, 25 years to get done. More than likely, what's going to happen, buildings will need to be torn down and rebuilt. And when they're rebuilt, they'll be designed for all electric. They'll be designed as being very, very efficient. So they will work. Modifying a building, an existing building is a little tough. It can work. I'm actually doing the senior center right now. I still will need to keep backup boilers, gas boilers, because we just can't get enough heat out of the system because the building was never designed for that. Now, I can say that I did get more money on energy conservation from the 6th floor this year, which I'm grateful for. And we do other projects. As was mentioned earlier, there was some mention about air conditioning. I do get all that money back, like 90% of it back from the state. They have a really great rebate program, and I put it right back in the accounts. Should there be an overall plan to do more energy efficiency? Sure. But I think it needs to have a bigger discussion. If you want to really spend a lot of money on buying solar panels and then maintaining them, we got to look at the payback period. And again, what are the priorities? Do you really want to have a building all electric? Which ones do you want me to do first? Where am I going to get the money to do it? And hopefully with a new sustainability director coming on board that would help us, and working with the 6th floor, we can get that done.
Well, it also argues maybe we should start developing a building reserve fund for sustainability and climate issues. So instead of having to go and borrow 50 million or $100 million to accomplish these things, we're starting to create a savings account, quote unquote, to fund these things as the plans start coming together, whether it be for
Carol,
schools or town buildings.
Charlie's already sort of doing that. He's just reinvesting it right away, is what he's saying.
I think that's on the margin, the HVAC stuff. It's not big amounts of money.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, he's rolling it over, which is great.
My numbers, and do not go running and printing this, but my numbers are in the $175 million figure. And I'll tell you right now today, that number is wrong. It's very, very low based on what we're getting. Everybody's doing this kind of work. Everybody's converting over. The prices are just getting higher and higher every day. And I need help doing a comprehensive plan. I can do my plan, but I need help with everybody and what they want to do. And then we could plan for that. And maybe there is a need for this, a reserve fund for this kind of work. Yes. But it's going to need a lot of money. I can tell you that. A lot of money. So.
Well, we've been asking Ziab or whoever, the sustainability director, to start putting together a price tag for years, because we've seen this coming, and hopefully with the new person that's coming on into DPW, I guess, the new sustainability person,
Yes.
we can get some better long-range planning around this. Sorry to hijack your conversation about it, but
That's okay. I mean, it's all part of our conversation that we need to have. Is there a new sustainability person? Has that person been hired?
I think they're interviewing.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not aware of anybody.
But it's going to be under DPW instead of planning,
Mm-hmm.
is what we were told by Aaron.
Okay. All right.
So for next fiscal year, the utility budget is being, in my opinion, is being properly budgeted. We have slight differences between what numbers I have and what the 6th floor have, which are minor. We have a difference of opinions, but we should be in a lot better shape next year, and not going to have the need for so much money. So everything should be, I'm going to say, post-COVID, new buildings coming online, everything should be settling down with energy. We're going to get some new contracts coming up soon. So it'll be much easier to predict what we're using for the utilities. I say easy. You never know what it's going to be, but it'll be better going into the future.
I'm curious as to one thing. I mean, it's a really small item, but the gasoline one, I thought all of our cars were electric now that we're using.
Well,
in the school department.
gasoline is, we use it for the building inspectors and the tradesmen. These are my guys. I ordered an electric van in June of last year, July, for this fiscal year. And as of a month ago, they still don't even have a VIN number for it. I have no idea where it is. I don't even know if they're building it. We are getting electric cars though. They are slowly coming in and they're getting quicker. So probably on the building inspector side, will be more greener on that side, but I did talk to other people in the DPW, and we might be switching to trucks with caps or new bodies because those are easier to get, frankly, than a van.
What does
I
that mean?
wanted to try it
trucks
out.
with-
Oh, go ahead.
What are trucks with caps?
Well, you take a pickup truck and you put a plastic cap, a fiberglass cap on the back so you can store tools inside of it. It would sort of look like a panel truck or a van.
Oh.
Instead of a, oh, yeah. Or you can get a whole new body on the back that has doors you open, you can walk inside. So there are options for us. I think probably the town will be leaning towards that. If I had all electric, that number would go away. 38, it would never leave. I wouldn't need any more gas in
Okay.
theory. So
All right.
we're getting there though.
All right.
I have two quick questions on the utilities, I just want to make sure. I know that our plan is to complete Lincoln's second and third floor, which means putting in those units, the electric units to condition the air. I just want to make sure that that's in the calculation for the electricity, because if we don't have to spend money on electricity for those units now, and we're going to next year, it's built into this. And then also Baldwin, I just want to make sure Baldwin, the electricity for Baldwin is in the projection. Is that accounted for, Charlie, for next year?
Yes, the new link is actually just the second floor. All the other floors are completed. And
Okay.
I wouldn't say it's a diminished amount. It's an amount, but I'm not worried about it. I'm actually putting in heat pumps. So in theory, I wouldn't be running the gas. So there'd be some savings on that. I'm fine with it. As long as you don't tell me to, and let's say the Pierce wasn't air conditioned, you tell me I want the entire Pierce school air conditioned next year, then I'd have to come up with a number that can increase that, but we're fine.
Yeah. And the other one is, of course, Heath. If we get the electric, once that goes in, it's in service to putting more units in over there. I just want to make sure, because I'd hate to see us get into the same problem next year that we're facing this year.
There'd be about 15, 16 units going in there, heat pumps as well, and a slight uptick.
Okay.
Can I get a clarification on the PDF where you have budgeted FY22, FY23, 24, and 25 utilities and repair and maintenance? Are those quote budgeted years actual numbers for the year, or is that what the budget request was for those earlier years?
Oh,
So do the budgeted numbers actually include the reserve fund transfers for the deficits?
I'd have to double check that, but I believe they do, and I have it on that other form. We can see the budget transfers going into it. I can double check that for you, Carol, and get back to you.
Okay. And then to follow up on Susan's question, it brings to mind both Newberry College and the Lincoln School, since they're both going to be occupied. Have those utility costs been estimated, and have they been budgeted, Helen, into the Pierce relocation budget, or how are we dealing with those?
So remember, we're going to be taking offline the Pierce building, both.
Right, but I
buildings.
don't know if it's a wash or not.
It'll be a wash.
It
Wait,
will be a wash.
The sixth floor, 2 Clark Road and the Pierce will be a wash with going to Newberry, because they're gonna use the other
Because
space.
we were already paying utilities there.
And is that, so you're keeping those utility costs in your operating budget instead of assigning them to the Pierce project budget, is what you're telling me?
Yeah, because they'll come back anyways to the Pierce, school when the Pierce.
Understood.
school is-
Okay,
And
And
hopefully
then-
less.
And there was also a slight chance, because of when we were putting this budget together, that potentially next week, the building commission would not approve it, the project, and we'd be in Pierce for one more year. So I can't remove the
Right.
money and try to put it back in at the last second. So that was the best compromise, and I agreed to it with the sixth floor. It sounds fine.
okay, great. And then this is maybe not appropriate, but it's sort of related. So when you have, like, Driscoll has 300 extra seats, I don't know if that equals X number of rooms that aren't being utilized. Is there the ability to shut down those rooms or cool them or heat them to a less intensive energy use. So when we have extra capacity, we aren't paying to fully heat and cool those spaces?
Yes, the spaces have occupancy sensors, so even though there might be a schedule telling the schools that room 308 is occupied, but if nobody goes in the room, it doesn't go occupied, it just sits. If somebody did walk into the room later in the day, then the heat would start up, it'd probably be a little cooler. But then the heat would start up and then people go away, and that's how I've always done it. Frankly, most of the schools are like that.
So I guess that's sort of a question like Mariah, we were talking about earlier about policy, whether or not that's something that the principals are aware of and whether they can, whether they view these spaces as, oh, it's empty, I might as well use it, or, oh, it benefits us in our budget if we don't casually use underutilized spaces. And that's not necessarily a conversation to get into now, but it's just something to be thinking about as we look at how to manage our occupancy costs.
Well, just to think one thing about that too is the utilities seem very distant from the decision-making of a building leader right now.
Yes, they
Right?
do.
They're not even in the PSB budget. They're over in the building department. And while Charlie Young did provide them a couple of weeks ago by building, I don't even think we usually see them by building. I'm not sure if building leaders do. So maybe they do. I don't know.
Yeah, and
Well, it's a
that's the
conversation
issue.
certainly maybe Susan could have with the building, with this principals,
Susan, in the Ed Reform Act, are utilities also supposed, like, because you know how you said everything's supposed to be represented at the building level? Does that include utilities in the Ed Reform Act, or is it not those kinds of costs that are expected?
Well, in Brookline, what happens at the end of the year is the town back charges us and then we have to record them as a charge anyway. So even if they show up in Charlie's budget, I have to record them to the state by building. Yeah.
But in
So
our,
yes, we have
but
to
in
record
this,
by building. Yeah.
okay, but in our budget, like, is a best practice that the utilities and those things are supposed to be shown by budget the same way all the rest of our costs are supposed to be shown by budget? Or is the Ed Reform Act silent on the question of utilities?
It doesn't speak specifically to utilities, it's resources.
Okay.
But typically you would see the utilities for a building showing there. In practice, your facilities department is usually working and managing that, much like Charlie is, on behalf of, and having conversations, of course, about different ways that we can, take advantage of lowering the temperature in the building during off times, all the things Charlie's doing. Charlie, I think, does a pretty good job following best practice for us, but yeah, we do have to share back to the state, consistent with Ed Reform by building. So, yeah.
Okay. I'm not clear, Mariah, where you were going with that. Do you want to have the utility costs in our budget? Is that what you're saying?
I was just asking what the law requires as we are continuing to align our budgeting practices with the law.
Yeah.
Whether or not that was a future step in what was expected.
Could
I
be.
apologize. I just had a work meeting scheduled on top of this that I can't.
It's okay, we're almost done.
Close to the end anyway, so I apologize. I need to step away, and I'll see many of you tonight for finance. And Susan, I'm
Oh,
gonna
yes.
try and call you in the middle of the day just to check in.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank
After
you,
one.
Mariah.
Thank you, Mariah.
I think where she was going with that was also that if the building leader sees those numbers as being a part of their budget, it just, I think that she was only interested in it based on what the law is. But I think that also if we have this sense that our principals would control the situation differently, if they saw that as being a part of their budget, it might make a bit of a change. I don't think that Mariah was advocating for that, but it's just a thought.
And I think that's really why the law is written the way it is, yeah.
Okay, well, maybe we can just do it separately. to make them aware at this point and deal with the law later on. Obviously, it's been since 93, this new law, so I mean, it's been a while. Okay, is there anything else on utilities that we need to know? Okay, I think the one thing that's important is our newer buildings are going to be more efficient and set up the way that Charlie's talking about, and I think that's really critical. You know, to be able to realize those cost savings. Is there any new or old business that anybody has?
Well, you wanted to get a brief update on Pierce, Newbury, Baldwin, Old Lincoln
Oh, yeah, you know,
agenda, or you want to? I mean, I can briefly just.
I think we could, well, yeah, why don't we know at least what's happening with that, and then, or should we save that for next time? Once we know whether we're moving now or not? Sarah, what do you think? Do you want to get that now?
Maybe, Charlie, it makes sense to always give us information as you have it. So maybe a brief overview. Do you have time for that, Helen?
Yeah, we were scheduled till 11. We're going to finish early, which is good.
I have, well, I do have some insider information that the numbers are coming in well for Pierce. One of the last ones is electrical, which will be coming in a couple of days. I feel optimistic, and I don't want to speak for the commission, but I feel optimistic they will approve it and we will be moving forward. But again, until the final vote is made, and they see the final numbers, it's up to them. Be that as it may, I still need to proceed as though the vote is happening, and we have been doing that. So out of the Pierce budget was carved $1.5 million. Of that was carved $575,000 to do capital building maintenance improvements to both buildings to get them ready for the schools. Between encumbrances and expenditures, I've used $487,000 of that money. A little more than I wanted to, and a lot of it has to do with HVAC. A lot of the equipment was not as well. It took a little bit more work and more money to take care of, but we are pulling it together. And we're just going to be starting doing the finishes and cleaning up at Newbury very shortly. Old Lincoln is mostly already done. It's just cleaning out the furniture. We got some minor stuff to do outside with the gate. As far as the balance, there's $800,000 for transportation costs, which fall under this, which I don't have anything to do with. And the move is $125,000. So those numbers are still in effect. So I would say that between Old Lincoln and Newbury, we'll be ready, we'll be on budget, and it'll meet the school's needs. So
That's great.
yeah,
That looks good. And actually, I think Susan and I a while back went and visited Newbury, and things are moving. Well,
I want to add, the school department's been very reasonable. It's an older, tighter building in the front part, but they've been very fair and compromising on what we can get done, what we should get done. We could, as Helen knows, we could put $14 million into Newbury in a minute, based on studies that were done before, right, Helen? But no, they've been very fair. The principal's been very reasonable. I just want to say that it's been very helpful having that cooperation.
Yeah, no, I think Jamie has been terrific, the principal, Jamie Adolph, in looking at spaces, being creative, how to use them. And Pierce is used to open spaces, so that's very helpful in general. But I think it's going to be a great building for them to use. And, you know, I think it'll, you know, having, you know, the space there was really important to be able to fit the whole school in.
That seems to be a bit of a strength of Jamie, is how to use a building, like how to take what she has and make the best use out of it.
You know, when you have a building like she had, you have to do that, so you learn.
And working with Karen and Sarah on my side, just to help to pull it all together, and I'm sure they're working deals with the principal in the background that I don't even know about, just getting it all done. So I'm very grateful to have them for help. So
Well, I think, and I would like to highlight what you just said. Sarah and Karen have been amazing, together with you, Charlie, certainly, and Susan, but Sarah and Karen have had boots on the ground, so to speak, and are really amazing working together and making things happen. So thank you. Thank you, Karen, and I'll tell Sarah on the side. Any other questions about the renovating of both Newbury and Old Lincoln for the Pierce School? No. Seeing none, I think we're going to, I guess we'll just end. We'll be able to end early and give everybody back an hour. So
Ellen,
thank
do you
you all.
want to ask if any of the attendees have questions, since you have time?
Sure.
I mean,
I
I know
assume
that's
they
not
would
your
raise their
custom, but
hand. I assumed they'd raise their hand, but they didn't. Do any of the attendees, do you have any questions? Sure, Pam.
Yes, I thought it would be really helpful for when we go back to the issue of utilities. If you could show us the budget amount for each school and the actual amount for each school, because that's one of the things that the subcommittee has talked about is the pressure on the utilities budget with new buildings and how to make sure that we budget correctly, and be really helpful to look at them school by school for this year and last year.
sure.
Are you talking for the, well, I suppose you want it for the subcommittee, or would you like us to have it for our next capital subcommittee? We could do that.
I was thinking it's one of the, when the AC committee studies and looks at all the requests. And they request for, and talks about the 800,000. You said difference between what was budgeted totally and what's actual. It'd be really helpful to at least look at, to see what's driving it. And maybe compare it to last year as well.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it'd be important, especially with Driscoll. Because
Exactly, right. It would be really helpful all schools because.
Driscoll, remember Pam, is a one-year thing.
No,
whereas
I get it. I completely understand that. But in the back of my mind, and I know some of my other subcommittee members were very worried about budgeting. I mean, looking at even the future in the Pierce School and what are we going to expect? And is it going to be part of the operating budget of the schools? How are you going to make it happen with the budget that we have? So I think we need to look at all the schools, and even it would be interesting, just school devotion, whatever we call it now, that what was it before and what was it after? In terms of just trying to help us. I don't know how else to get that information.
No,
But I hope
okay.
I hope you get the thread of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think, well, Charlie, do you? We have those
Charlie,
numbers, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I can
Charlie,
ju-
I'm
okay.
under the impression that the Driscoll overage for this year is coming out of the Driscoll building budget rather than operating.
There's a little bit of money budget for it, but no, it'd be coming out of the operating because it didn't get put in last year. There's only about $50,000, and that money was set there because the old Lincoln was, the old Driscoll was going to be online at the same time that the new Driscoll was. We had to transfer the kids over, so we had to keep the old building going for a little bit. So that money was sort of helped me take care of that transitional cost, which I'll grab eventually, but it's only $50,000.
Okay, because I thought at the last building commission meeting, they were talking about that there was plenty of money, not plenty, but there were discretionary funds for teachers' wants, not needs in the capital budget of something like 400,000. And the building commission was not going to approve anything until they knew that everything was in on budget and that there'd be the potential to use that 400,000 for these utility overages for the first year. So it sounds like there's some disconnect here. And I think if we can take it out of the capital budget, it should go out of the capital budget rather than out of operating savings.
There is this $400,000 wish list. It's actually the schools and my list. And some of it was agreed to that it's a high priority, needed to be done so the school could function. That list probably won't be touched until after the old building is torn down and the HVAC system is fully operational, which won't happen until the fall.
So the wrong,
Right,
use
next
is it the
fiscal
wrong year? Is that what you're
Yes,
telling me?
because we're all afraid, but we don't know what's in the ground yet. And you got to get the job mostly done. They did, when the project was all put together, they did earmark $50,000 in a line item for utilities for this kind of thing that would happen. But the plan was just to have it, because we didn't know when the kids were going to get out of the school. So I'll definitely grab that, but I doubt the commission will let any more money go on that until, if the building was done, then by all means, but.
I understand now. So it's a timing issue rather than a conceptual issue.
No, it may be more because that's contingency money from the building, correct? And that,
Well,
the
there's
question is,
multiple contingency accounts as architectural general, but yes, these are contingency funds as of right now appear that they won't be needed to finish the project, but until the project is done and everybody's been paid, we don't know.
and
Got
that's one of the pieces that I was talking about in terms of buying the solar panels out of that. And that investment could, bring all sorts of returns to our utilities budget, much better than just taking the money and paying for the bills.
Well, but it also raises from my mind, and maybe this just isn't possible in municipal finance. Can't you repay it? Can't you borrow it from the operating budget and then repay it? So you have those funds to do other things. And maybe people are going to tell me that's not how municipal finance
Wait a minute,
works.
explain that again.
So we have a timing issue between two different fiscal years, which is
Yeah.
why the sixth floor is taking it out of an operating budget. And
I
I'm
see.
saying, if it turns out we have it left over, is there a way to bridge the timing issue by repaying the operating budget somehow?
No.
And that's,
You can ask
you
the
know,
sixth floor and watch their heads explode on that question, but go right ahead.
that might be fun to watch, but okay.
All right. Any other questions? From the panel, from the attendees or anybody here? Okay, we will get back to you soon with the date for the next meeting. Once we figure out for the next few meetings, I'd like to set up for till the end of the year so that we're all set and people know ahead of time. But
That's
thank you,
helpful.
Charlie, for all your hard work on putting together those spreadsheets. And thank you, Susan, for getting us through the repair and maintenance stuff. And see you next month.
And I owe you all dates for the AC meetings. And
Yeah.
I'll work on those and get clarity over this March 26th date.
Yeah, that's a problem because I'm going to be flying that night, but
Okay. All
all
right.
right. We'll
Take
talk.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.